The Game Schooler podcast is a weekly audio show that educates new and experienced gamers about the awesomeness of tabletop gaming. In this week's episode, we'll cover Kronologic Paris 1920, our game of the week, talk to Dr. Jon Spike in the School of Gaming, and wrap it up by revealing our high five letter B games. Welcome to the Game Schooler podcast. I'm your host, along with my co-host, Dr. Michael McCabe. How's it going, Michael?
What's happening, Doug? How are you?
Pretty good. I'm going to be surrounded by doctors this episode. I'm feeling horribly inaccurate, or inadequate, not and inaccurate.
Well,
we're off to a great start.
You're okay, man. Let's just have a podcast about board games and not people's credentials and talk about what's awesome and follow up and do what we've been doing for the last 218 episodes as we get into episode 219, Douglas.
Yep. I've got some follow up, and we had a comment on a YouTube video about our transportation games, our high five transportation games, wondering why Sky Team did not make the list.
Well, I could tell people why it didn't make the list.
I'm going to blame you. Yeah, well, I haven't played it.
Blame me.
You've played it. I've never played it.
I haven't played it with you. I've played it on Board Game Arena. I've gotten demo in person. I've come on now. It's gonna be a game of the week. It's gonna be an easy game of the week.
I thought you'd played it at a convention.
I might have actually. I'd have to look at my log plays to be sure. I just know I haven't played it with you. I know you haven't played it yet. I know it will be a game of the week eventually because it is awesome.
So that's why it didn't make my list. Michael, that's up to him.
Well, speaking of, last week, what did we talk about, Doug? Transportation games, right?
Yeah.
And from the time we recorded last week through last night, I played a transportation game, and it really encompasses what's awesome with the hobby. I had someone message me on Board Game Geek wondering if I'd be interested in a trade for Galactic Cruise. And the message came out of the blue. I'm like, no, that's a $120 hobby game. My house is chucking full. I'm not, when do I have the time? When do I have this? When do I have that? And then I thought, well, it's coming in a trade. Let me see what people at the Dice Tower think.
Not like a pretty real solid acquisition.
Review. Let me see what, and it was like, I'll give it a try. And I loved it, Doug. So it's just interesting that in a week, there's two more games that one will definitely be a game of the week in Sky Team and Galactic Cruise. I'm not going to push it on you. I'm going to continue to play it solo. And
he's already tried pushing it on me.
Man, it's just because I showed up at your house with it in my car doesn't mean that I pushed it on you. Okay, it can be in my car, and my car can be at your house. 20
texts of images, of photographs of every possible angle from the game that you could possibly come up with.
A lot of good angles, man.
You're
building a ship. You're transporting people throughout.
He sent me more pictures than the Board Game Geek image library has for it.
Also accurate. I got excited about it, and I think why it encompasses what's awesome with the hobby is there's. It's one thing to play games and to learn about games and explore games, but to also just have those wonderful moments of being proven wrong, I guess. Yeah. Here's a game that I've dismissed multiple times. I think it's to this, it's to that. And to be able to put about 5 hours into just actually learning the game and to stumble through a solo play of it and be like, yep, this is going to push out two other hobby games and take up that space on the shelf over there.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, well, it actually leads into a little bit of what I have for the awesomeness this week. And, anybody who's listened to our podcast for a long time knows that we're not always about the new and the hotness and chasing shininess. But one of the things in reflection, in prepping for the podcast every week and this segment, I always just take some time and think about, what's happened over the last week? What's, just general reflection. And so
Doug's working on a memoir over there.
Yeah. My life in gaming, my life in last place. So we're not always talking about the new, the shiny, but there is something awesome
Even though
about.
I just did, but go ahead. Sorry.
But there is something awesome about uncovering new things. Now that may be a new game, but it can also be an old game, and discovering a new strategy, or playing a game that you haven't played in a long time, and like having a new appreciation for it. Sometimes a game comes out and you play it and you're like, oh, this is pretty good. And then time goes by and then you go back and play it again and you're like, this is way better than I remember it being.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it more now. And then like the idea of new memories. It's like you're playing games and you've created a new memory of, whether that's an awesome turn and a terrible turn that goes so bad that it's memorable and hilarious. So just the idea of uncovering new things where they may be in the hobby, and this hobby provides a lot of opportunities for that to happen. And I think that's one of the awesome parts of tabletop gaming.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to give just two from the last week, if that's okay.
Yeah.
We had Mother's Day this past weekend, and my wife wanted to play one of her favorite games, Snow White Gemstone Mining, which was a game of the week. Woefully out of print, but it's out and about in the wild. You can find it, maybe. And, my 9-year-old said, can we play outside? So we did. We went outside and played on our back porch. Fortunately, there was very little wind, so the cards didn't go flying all over the place, but just, 70 degrees, sun is out, and we're playing one of our favorite games and just having a blast. And it's like, man, this is what's awesome about the hobby. And then, we have a friend in the second piece, and then I'll close it out here, but we have a friend that we play games with, who's really, folks, he is quite the Lorcana player. Like, he's done the deep dive and been to nationals and taken his kid all over the country and possibly even the continent playing Lorcana. And he was telling me about this game store, and he said, this is one of the nicest game stores I've ever been in. I'm like, what? I think I know the store you're talking about. And he said, no, brand new location. And it's the same. And we see these folks at Gen Con every year. And folks who go to Gen Con might know the people at Chimera Hobby Store. And this is their Fond du Lac location. So, I was like, kids, we're on an adventure. We're going to see family, but we got some time. We're going to go check out this game store. And Doug, I kid you not, when I walked in, it was like, oh my goodness, this is beautiful. Clean. You would have loved the merchandising. I mean, the toys and the family games were out front. The hobby scary games were buried deep in the corner. Ton of open play space. And I did something I haven't done in a while, Doug. I impulse buyed because I was tired and not being able to get it in a trade, and I paid full MSRP for a future game of the week. I don't know if I should give it away or not, but it will be coming over to your house, possibly even this evening. Might push this game upon you, and that's Harmonies, folks, which I've played with some of our listeners online on Board Game Arena, but I'm yet to actually play in person. And it was nice to be in a really nice store, to be able to walk clean aisles and get solid customer service and just talk games. I feel like this. I'm like Ray Liotta, and this must be heaven. Are you describing heaven? Shout out! No, it's Iowa. Shout out
Wisconsin.
to our friendly local game stores that are doing it, and I mean really doing it. They're putting the time and the care and the love into their store. I talked to the owner for a while and just chatted and said, my two younger kids, if you recall, I bought squishies for them at Gen Con from their booth, and it's like and they were obviously trying to get more of the Squishmallow, whatever they are. I don't know the brand, but some sloth worm trying to get me to buy them. No, I'm not buying any of that. Put it on your Gen Con list. So it was just nice to have one of those adventurous days, and I didn't even feel guilty walking out of the store with a full MSRP, Doug. You believe that?
No, I don't. Who are you?
I know, it's been a while.
Speaking
about 100
of
episodes, probably.
How dare you do that? As a segue into our spotlight game this week, how dare you, from 2023 and publisher Alion. The designer is Rodrigo Rigo. The artist is by Germund Bone, Luis Francisco, and Diego Sa. 2 to 10 players, 15 minutes. 14 plus, 10 plus on Board Game Geek, and this would be a family's party game, essentially. Get ready to test your wits and nerve in a whirlwind of wild guesses and daring challenges. In How Dare You, players guess numerical answers to quirky questions without overshooting the mark, all while bluffing and daring their friends to outsmart each other. On your turn, draw a card and read a question, like how many coins are in the first level of Super Mario Brothers, or what's the maximum speed of a poodle?
172. Same answer for both.
Then guess a number close to, but not higher than the correct answer. The next player must guess higher, passing play to the next player, or shout dare if they think you've gone too far. Then reveal the answer. The player who's wrong takes the card. The game ends when a player collects a set number of cards based on player count, and the players will count the number of duck symbols on their cards. The player with the most is the silly goose loser, and everyone else wins. So can you thread the needle with your guesses, or will you waddle away as the silly goose of the party? So that is How Dare You. This is a small, basically just a deck of cards. I got this at Gen Con in 2023. I believe it's become more readily available now.
Yeah, it's out and about. I mean, Miniature Market has it for $12. I saw it at Noble Night when I was there a couple weeks back.
So the other thing, too, I'll mention is that there are a couple of optional variants to increase the stakes and kind of offset points and things that you can add in. But the base game is how I described earlier. What do you like about this one, Michael?
I love that it plays so quickly, gets to the table with almost no rules teach, and it can go for 10 minutes or it can go for an hour and a half, and you could play with 4 to a dozen people. I mean, you really can divide this thing up and play in teams. It's a good time. This is a fun party game. Does not require a ton of skills, does require an awesome attitude and self-deprecating humor, and you can get it up and running. And then, like you talked about, Doug, it's so portable.
Yeah.
You know, it really is up there for one of those. I mean, you're not going to push back on this is a party game, right? You agree with that? Yeah. I mean, what do you like about it, Doug?
Certainly a party game that can be played with families. Sometimes I think this is one that's even better when you're playing with a bunch of, it can work with people you don't know, but it works really well with people you do know. And where the fun comes in is the confidence in the answers.
Yeah.
In both of those, where somebody will boldly complain, say it's 47, like so confidently, or somebody's like, you're 100% wrong. And then you consult, and then the laughter afterwards. My brother, we would describe, we always said he should make up a beer brand called Bold Claim Beer, because he will have a drink and then he is going to say something outrageous of just any type of feat. It would be like, I could lift a car if I had enough, then fill in the blank with something. Like I had enough Doritos. Like, okay, this reminds me of My Brother, the game, because the confidence that people answer with things is like, of course it's 18, and then it's like 18. So it's always funny when it's something like out of the, like wild out of the thing, where it's like something that everybody's kind of thinking is in the 15 to 20 range, and somebody comes out and they're like 350. You're like, what? Have you? It'd be like, how many coins can you fit into a pair of Levi jeans? And somebody's like, 25,000. You're like, are you sure about that? Like, it's probably more than you think, but not that much. And that's where the fun comes in.
You can't go over. So, right. So you get that anchoring effect where people will be, you're going around the table and people will be slightly ticking it up. Like Doug talked about, 18 coins, 22 coins, 74 coins.
20, whoa.
20,000 coins.
Yeah.
Another example, no spoilers here, but the one card I was looking at before I put it away is oldest sitting president, Doug. What age were they?
I'm going to say say 80.
Yeah, and I would have probably then said 81. The correct answer is 98 years old.
Holy moly.
Yeah, I should have pulled the name, but some individual in Malawi. You can look it up, folks. Google it.
Not in the U.S. I thought you were just asking in the U.S.
No,
That's
oldest,
tricky.
Yeah, a lot of tricky in there. So that deck of cards is really well done.
I'm sure he's keeping up on AI.
Yeah, no kidding. Most of it is. Doug, I believe he's deceased. Can we have some respect here?
I'm curious what the oldest living one is.
But that's where the game goes. What the exchange that we just had, that really is where the game goes. I'm curious. It says that the game is for 1 to 10 players. What would this game be like solo?
I would be so angry with myself.
Somebody going,
you idiot! How could you overguess?
Going through the deck, playing it solo, creating a bot, and then recording their plays on BGG. Oh,
yeah, I don't know. I'd have to really dive into the rules on that one.
Solo party games. Games to play at a wedding solo. How dare you?
We've met a new threshold. There is one thing that I will point out is that I have not gone through every question and card in this deck.
Well, I have that on my list. It could require a filter. There are some PG-13 level type questions.
And that's easily solved by having an adult as the main reader of the game. I know that the directions say, the person who starts the turn draws the card and reads the question. It's easy enough to just have one adult kind of as the game master if you're playing with younger players. So just be aware of that. But this game, very easy to take anywhere and extremely fun to play in a party situation or a family situation. So that's our spotlight game this week. How dare you?
Hastings Banda ruled Malawi from 1966 to 1994. 98 years old.
Impressive run.
Yeah.
All right, so that's our spotlight game this week. I want to remind everybody to watch, subscribe, like on the YouTube channel. We really appreciate it. Spread the word about the podcast and leave a review there on the platform of your choice. We appreciate that. It helps us out.
5 star.
Only 5-star, please. And if you have any questions or comments, reach out to us. Email at gameschooler.com. Now let's move on to the game of the week.
The game of the week. The game of the week is an in-depth look at a family-friendly game we think you should try if you get the chance. This week's game is Kronologic, Paris, 1920. Designed by Fabien Gradel and Johan Levitt. Art by Arch Poplar. Let me try that again. Arch Poplar and Jan Valiant, published by Hachette. This is a 2024 release with additional games in the line scheduled to release in 2025. Playtime of 30 minutes, 1 to 4 players, ages 10 plus. This is a family game. This game is the second game of the week by Fabien Gradel. Doug, give us the overview.
Step into the shadowy halls of the Paris Opera in 1920, where secrets lurk behind every velvet curtain. In Kronologic Paris 1920, players become sharp-witted investigators racing to unravel mysteries by tracking suspects through time and space. Can you piece together the clues to crack the case first? Each player starts with a note sheet, pencil, and screen to shield their deductions, and then dive into one of 15 mysteries across 3 scenarios, ranging from poisonings to jewel heists. The game unfolds on a board of the opera's 6 rooms, with 6 suspects and 6 hours. Each suspect moves to an adjacent room every hour and never stops. On your turn, align a room card with either a suspect tile or a time tile to gather 2 clues, one shared with all players and one for your eyes only. Ask questions like, when was the detective on the stage, or who was in the foyer at midnight, to deduce each suspect's movements. Strategically choose your queries to narrow down the culprit, location, and time of the crime. But beware, the first player to ask gets clues sooner, giving a slight edge. When you're ready, declare you're ready to solve. Write down your guess and check the solution. If you're right, you win. But guess wrong and you're out of the game. With 15 replayable investigations of increasing complexity, every case feels fresh. Can you outsmart your fellow sleuths to solve the opera's mysteries, or will the truth slip through your fingers like a phantom in the night? So that is how you play Kronologic Paris 1920. What do you like about the gameplay in this one, Michael?
Yeah, great overview, Doug. For this one, I'm going to send it back to you and ask you and really riff off what you like. I feel like this is a game that you should take the lead in on that, because I have a whole lot to say. But I'd like to hear from you. What did you like about our first handful of plays of Kronologic Paris 1920?
Sure. So the thing that really piqued me about this game is, if you have followed the podcast for a long time, several years ago, there was a game called Turing Machine that from the exact same designers that came out that I was really excited for. I'm a fan of deduction games. I was excited for that game, and then the reviews came out, and I saw a little bit more on the gameplay, and people mentioned that it kind of slowed down, and you had to play with the right group of people that were really into the math and the solving of the problems and stuff like that. So it kind of got pushed to the back burner. And then I heard about this game as the approachable version of the exact same system. So it really piqued my interest when I heard about it. What I love about this game is, I've already said that I like deduction games, but what really works for this game has two things. One is the private and public information, because that keeps everybody engaged on everybody else's turn. I can't wait to see what Michael asks, because it's going to give me some information, which could be the information that I need to unlock my puzzle. So everybody is engaged from turn to turn. But there is also a level of tension, a good tension, of the race element of this game. Of not only am I just trying to solve the case, I'm trying to solve the case faster, and using logic and deduction to figure out where people have been and where they're going and where that crime was committed. So the ability to have a deduction game that keeps everybody engaged and allows that tension to exist is really unique for me, because a lot of games, I'll go look at a clue, but it's irrelevant to everybody else. Like, okay, I guess maybe I'll go to that one later or something. It's like, and if you're playing that game with three or four players, it's like, all right, 4 people are looking at clues before I get to get a little bit more information. That fact that there is public and private information that's giving out with every guess or every question is really cool. That's the thing that I like the most.
Wow. Yeah, I'm glad I sent it over to you. There's a lot that you said there that I absolutely agree with. I'll tell you what I love about the game. I love the tension of, I have successfully deduced that I have a 50% chance of solving it right now. Give me 2 more turns and I'll know exactly who did it, where they did it.
Yeah.
But I might not have 2 more turns. So that decision space of, I want to solve it right now, versus I need to be able to see exactly what Doug saw on the stage, because that was the moment 2 turns ago where things started to narrow down. The other thing that I really liked about Kronologic, I thought it played well at 2 and at 3. And sometimes with deduction games, those player counts matter tremendously. That system of getting some information on every turn leaves me engaged for the entire game. And I'm glad that Chet, I'm going to say a few things here and kind of get off topic a little bit, but in doing research for this and in talking with you last week about it, they've got 2 more games coming out in the line, at least that we know about: Cusco 1450 and Babylon 2500. So already, it to me, it's similar to like a Chronicles of Crime when that first came out, and Lucky Duck had a series of those. It's like, okay, which one am I going to get? Because my friend Doug has the base game. So which one do I want to get? And that's where I'm at with Kronologic right now. I know this is going to be a hit for my family. I also know that it's not a game that's going to be going away. for me and like
Yeah.
for us and for our game group, $25. And the one thing that, I want to just address from doing some research on the forums, I was like, that's just completely wrong. Although there's 15 scenarios in the box, Doug, if you and I went back and played that first scenario,
Yeah.
when did we play that? All of 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago?
Yeah. Sounds
I
about
have
right.
no idea. Now that might say more about my working memory, but
No.
I'm not going to remember. I could go through that whole game and have a wonderful experience again. So there's just a lot there.
Well, and I have that. I have that in my things to be aware of. There are 15 cases in the box. That is true. But the thing about it is that they're all using the same 6 characters, the same 6 times in the same 6 locations. Yeah. So after you play the second, obviously if you play one on a Wednesday night, Thursday, it's probably not replayable. But if you play any other scenario in between, you play any other scenario in between, I could go back to the first one, and it's like you're looking at stuff and getting handfuls, pockets of information. It's like the idea that I would remember who did what in the first case that we played 3 weeks ago, even after even when I'm solving it the second time, the second case that we played, I'm not even sure that my notes are right.
Yep.
Let alone to be able to and it's not it could be a knock on the game, I guess, but it's not a really strong, there's not a narrative story where you're like, oh, that was a big revelation that you would remember. It's literally just the same 6 characters, the same 6 locations, and the same 6 times. And let me tell you, they get jumbled up very quickly.
So quickly.
So anybody that's saying that this is not replayable or can't stick around is that's so off base, in my opinion.
My opinion as well. And I think where this game, from a gameplay standpoint too, just want to make some connections for if you've played this, then you may want to play that. I won't get too far on a tangent, but I want to just mention 3 games quickly. Clue. If you've ever played Clue and had a good time with it as a kid, and that led you to other games maybe in the hobby like a Dinosaur Tea Party or even a Museum Suspects, which are both games of the week, Kronologic 1920 is a perfect fit into that type of deduction game, and yet it plays quickly.
Yeah.
It really does. I felt like the rules were pretty sticky and straightforward too. I feel like this is a game where I could borrow your copy and take it to a game night with my family and get it up and running, no problem.
Yeah, majority of, which leads into the production. I mean, a majority of the rules are on your player shield on the back of how everything works. You can just consult that. It even tells you this is the information that you're supposed to be sharing with other people. This is what you should keep to yourself. Gives you notes on how you can use the note sheet to record stuff. I mean, the system works flawlessly, and I can't imagine the amount of math that goes into making something like this work. But the production is awesome. The other thing too is it's not in a it's in an appropriate sized box, if that makes sense. Sometimes
it doesn't make sense. Explain that, Doug.
Sometimes games will try to fit way too many components to have a tiny box size, and it seems like it's busting at the seams. Other times, companies will put 10 cards into a Ticket to Ride size box so it looks nice on the shelf. This one is appropriately sized, which I appreciate as a somebody that's looking to save shelf space, and it's like it fits, it's compact, it's perfect. So anything else from you on production?
No, you covered it all. And it's your game. You've punched it. You've set it up. I've just played it a handful of times here, and I enjoy it. It's solid. I guess I will say this. I was surprised at the price point. And I know that's not something we talk about a ton, but having just been in a friendly local game store this weekend and seeing games at MSRP and having oh my goodness, there's a lot in the box. They're really, when you get it out on the table.
All right. So things to be aware of. There is murder of some sort in this game. Various things.
Every episode.
Not everyone. I think one of them is a jewel heist.
Oh, okay.
So there is some variety.
Illegal behavior.
Yes, illicit behavior. However, it's in the same vein as a game of Clue. It's like somebody's been murdered. There's nothing grotesque or gratuitous about the descriptions or the manner of the way that happens. So be aware that is in the game, but it's no different than what you're probably used to in sort of a murder mystery or deduction. That would keep it on that same family level. I would have no problem playing this with a 10 to 12-year-old just based on somebody was poisoned, and you don't. Some of that is it's literally there's 3 scenarios. The lead into the scenario is the same for 5 cases. So quite frankly, you could take this out of the box and come up with your own little story and say who did this and go off and start playing with your kids in that way too as well. Anything else to be aware of? I mentioned the replayability, but
yeah, I have one thing on my list, and I've been playing quite a few deduction games lately. And I think one thing to be aware of, if you're the game master, the rules teach for a deduction game, specifically one like this, that rules teach pretty much takes the entire game because it must be right throughout. If a player at the table bungles something from a deduction standpoint because of how that information is relayed, that can ruin the experience for everyone else at the table. So just something to be aware of. I know a lot of experienced gamers are like, well, yeah, you're stating the obvious, but the game's engaging. And so I'm imagining, like, if I'm teaching this game to my family, I'm going to get lost in the puzzle right away of who did it, where they did it. And if I'm facilitating that, I just need to take a step back, make sure everybody's having a good time at the table. Does anyone have any questions? And that's something that I think is unique to a lot of deduction games, is you just want to get that teach. It's not, the teach isn't done when I'm done with the teach. It's really for that whole first game.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing where I think relying on that player shield is such a great reminder and helper for people and to kind of, even though it may seem redundant or formulaic, to kind of guide people through their turns the first couple of rounds, so people are giving the right public clue and the right private clue and things like that, I think is a great point from you there. All right, moving on to skills. There's going to be a lot of critical thinking skills in this one.
Tons.
The big one is going to be processing information. A game in which players must examine and analyze information, whether you're getting that information privately or how you can kind of corroborate what you're thinking based on what that public information is a big one. I think it goes hand in hand with problem solving as well, right? A game that rewards players for finding solutions to, in this case, complex problems with a whole bunch of missing pieces that you've got to put together. So a real critical thinking powerhouse. What about some other ones?
I'm going to bring 2 to the table here, Doug. Doug, what is a game that rewards careful watching of details and behaviors in order to understand or arrive at a judgment?
The observation, I believe.
Look at you. It is observation. This is a little one, but it's one that I really noticed in our 2-player game that we had recently. Watching where you go and your reaction, because there's a note-taking aspect to this, right? I need to share some information with people publicly, but then privately I'm going to write down that information. Well, am I basically writing down a dissertation and trying to make connections, or am I just checking a box? And so there's layers of observation in this game. It's not just looking at how did people move throughout the rooms. Am I able to cross off a suspect and do I know that they could not have possibly been in the stage or the amphitheater at that time? Or is someone really excited with the clue they just got? So not only am I watching the abstract characters and how they're moving around, but I'm actually watching the people at the table and how they respond to the clues that they see as well.
Yeah, well, even the idea of what questions people are asking. Yeah, because sometimes you're like, is that just like a wild random thing, or do they know something that's leading them to that question? And then you're kind of looking like, What do they know? Why did they ask that question?
So what did happen at 3:00 over there?
Yeah. Well, 3:00 seems very interesting right now for some reason.
But then even keeping that straight, right?
Yeah.
Like where did they go at 3? Like, oh, I already had that information. Oh,
Yeah.
that was a wasted turn. So that
Yeah.
observation is key. And then another one is time management, a game that improves a player's ability to organize and plan how long they spend on specific activities before running out of time. You know, it might be 5 or 6 turns into the game, but I talked about at the front end of the episode. When do I push to solve? Do I need to have perfect information, or am I okay with 50% information? Because for me, if I need perfect information, I'm likely going to be second or third. So that's another skill. How about you? Any others?
I had concentration, a game that encourages players to focus their attention or efforts on the task. If you're looking for a game to get your kids' heads down and out of a screen, like there's no time that you're not thinking through the process of the case and listening, and so you will be very focused. And the other thing I had too was spatial perception, which I know we talk about this a lot as a skill, and a lot of times we talk about putting tiles on a board or moving pieces around. This one is a mental spatial perception because you need to kind of track where people are moving. There is that element that each character on the board of the 6 characters, they move to an adjacent space every turn. And so it's kind of like keeping track of a dance in your head of, okay, they moved there, then they moved there. It's only other possible places they could move are this. And you're trying to keep that kind of in your head of mapping it out. And so it's like a mental spatial perception that I think is really cool in this game as well.
Well, and a lot of our listeners who work with spreadsheets will be thinking of a spreadsheet now, Doug,
sure.
Because as you're describing that, if your face is in spreadsheets for even a little bit of the day, you might think, oh, I might have an advantage with Kronologic. I could see that. And it is. It's good.
All right. What are your final thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, my final thoughts are if you're looking for an approachable family deduction game that also, packs a punch for your brain in under a half hour, check out Kronologic. The entire system is something I'm really excited to continue to explore as they release games. How about you, Doug?
Yeah, it's a game. It distills a game like Clue, I think, into the most essential and enjoyable parts. Right? It takes out all of the fluff and gets right down to the meat and the potatoes. And it's a unique puzzle that manages to provide edge of your seat engagement throughout, which is pretty rare. So that is our game of the week, Kronologic Paris 1920 from Super Meeple and Hachette.
The School of Gaming. In the School of Gaming, we discuss concepts, keywords, etiquette, and helpful ideas in the world of gaming. This week, we are fortunate to be joined by designer, publisher, and teacher, Dr. Jon Spike. Jon, welcome back to the Game Schooler podcast.
Hey, thanks so much, gentlemen, for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah,
our pleasure.
We had you on in episode 108. You had immediately followed Phil Walker Harding. That was back in March of 2023. You're an active member in the Discord, so I know a lot of our listeners are going to be familiar, and we're really excited to have you on the show today.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, gentlemen. And yeah, that Discord, I've had more time since picking up the doctorate, so I've tried to engage a little bit more in the Discord. I'm playing more games, so that leads to more Discord conversations.
Yeah,
ahead.
What's happened in the last 100 episodes for you?
Yeah, so that episode, you gentlemen gave me the opportunity to share about Game Stormers, which was our 2023 game release, kind of a creative yet strategic storytelling game. I've been kind of, peddling that. I sell it a lot to families, a lot to school districts, a lot to organizations. I've really recently hit the public library circuit pretty hard, and I've been working with library systems in Wisconsin to do events around it. And now we're actually rolling out Doomscroll basically like this week. I think when this episode drops, we'll have it available out of our fulfillment center. And so that button will go from pre-order to order. Doomscroll, and that is our kind of strategic social media card game where you are a social media company in a fantasy world and you're trying to sell ads the fastest by creating an addictive social media feed. So that's kind of the premise behind that one. With our company, we have an educational kind of twist to all of our games. So this game is meant to spur some conversations about our social media use and what social media companies aim to do, to us at times.
Yeah, we are definitely the product, correct? in that case.
That is the big takeaway from this game. You kind of are pulling the levers as that company, finding out what keeps people on the screens, and then pushing those ads to try to sell to them. So it's kind of a game where you are pulling the puppet strings instead of having them pulled on you, and hopefully it helps you see those strings a little bit better is the goal.
That's awesome. Can't wait to play that. Give it a try and put it through its paces. Jon, why crowdfunding?
Yeah, this is our second Kickstarter, and there's a few different reasons. I think number one, just if you're an indie publisher like I am, this is my side passion project. You just need to be able to raise those initial funds to be able to do your manufacturing run. And so this is a way to do it without taking a big hunk out of the, taking out that second mortgage or dipping into the old college fund for the kiddos. So it's a way to, get that started. And then also it's just really fun because you build these rabid fans. I mean, you two are very familiar. You've got just tons of rabid fans, in your Discord. I know wherever you go, you kind of just have a screaming legion of fans following you.
Yeah, naturally.
This guy, who's he talking
to? And so
did a beetle walk onto my screen?
I hear screams every time I go past Michael's house. So it's just, there's just always a crowd.
Those are my children usually asking for food.
That's right.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Spike.
They do look a lot like you. Yeah, that makes sense now. But
they're either laughing or crying, and it's indistinguishable, but they are screams.
Yeah. So I think also you just get to build these fans. I have people who played the game. When I go to different playtesting events, they play it. They get invested in it. They go and back it. They play in our contests. I have one gentleman who's super excited. He won a contest where he got to kind of like name a card and come up with kind of the flavor text of the card. And he's just one of those fans that is all in on any of our products. Yeah. And it comes through that crowdfunding, the contests, the events, the stories that come out of it. And so you also get to build this rabid fan base that might be there if you do normal channels and you pitch and go through a publisher, but here you can kind of build those people that are really invested in your brand. And I think that's special, and I know you gentlemen get it too with your game schooler people who really get it, what you're going through here with the podcast.
So one of the things we like to do is always talk about the positive and what's awesome in gaming. What is awesome about being a publisher and putting your own games out, whether you're the designer or not the designer, but that act of publishing?
Yeah, I think one thing that's kind of cool, and I know, your episodes, of course, are timeless, but something that, has been, a thing that's been floating around the industry has been, the uncertainty of tariffs. But one really cool thing is that we don't care if it's a publishing company of 40 people on the team or one or 1.5. My wife is my better half and contributes to the publishing company too. But they invited Jamie Stegmaier, actually put together a kind of a suit saying, hey, we feel like we're being unduly punished here in the publishing industry with some of the actions being taken, and not to get too political, just he invited any publisher. He didn't care if you were a publisher of, one person, one game, or if you were a big studio, join, kind of our lawsuit, to do this. And there is associations, there's guilds where they invite any size publisher to really join in and advocate for the industry. What needs to change? What can we provide for resources? So do you need model contract language? Do you need advice about navigating how to select, an artist or graphic designer? Do you need help navigating some of these logistical challenges that we face as publishers? And so the community is really strong, and the community is very much about, hey, we've all been there. We've all started from maybe a company of one, and we want to give back. So it's a very supportive publishing company space. There's a lot of groups, just like you have your Discord. I'm a member of about 3 to 4 different publishing Discords or Facebook groups where we compare notes and we say, hey, what's been successful for you? So if your listeners are wondering, the publishing community is a lot like your Discord, just people looking to share ideas, share lessons learned, and really help each other out.
So that's great. And you're a promoter, a business person. So I know you won't go negative here, but I am curious, Dr. Spike, and hopefully you can be candid and transparent with us. How do you manage expectations with a crowdfunded project? Because when I look at the comments and what people expect, and like, well, if it's on the water, then it will be here for my convention that I'm hosting next week. I expect you to have that at my house for me.
And John, why aren't you personally delivering every copy?
How do you manage expectations for the people on the other end of that relationship where they feel like, I gave you $24, so why isn't this game here when you said it would? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think number one, it's always about being consistent, being on time with your updates, and I think also just in those updates, just owning some things too. I had to own, I was hoping for December 2024. For those listening, this is a May 2025, recording and release. So I didn't deliver on that date, and I told people, in the beginning of some updates, hey, I said this. I did not expect that in our final testing, we'd realize, hey, we want to have more ad cards for you. We didn't want you to run out. And so I tried to tell people, we, in our quality control, said there are scenarios where we've been running out of ad cards and we didn't want it to negatively affect the game, have you reshuffle.
And what does that mean? Really get into the weeds on that, running out of ad cards. What is that?
Yeah, so you have this in game where you kind of, quote unquote, get decked, where the deck runs out of a certain type of card. Some games advise you to shuffle back in. You can do that with our game. But we wanted it to have tons of original content. So we made an announcement, hey, we're going to have our artist do these 4 more. We waited, we've, seen if this affects the, the balance of the game. It does not. So in our game, you're trying to sell 3 ads the fastest. There are scenarios where you'd have to shuffle back in those discarded ad cards that people didn't want, put them back in. We said, wouldn't it be more fun if you had more content? So we tried to own that, say, hey, we still think we're going to be on track, but this could affect it. I also, some life changes, had my daughter right around when we launched, kind of this Kickstarter, my second daughter, tried to wrap up the dissertation, the doctorate. And, those are things I'm like, I think I'm on pretty good track to have that wrapped up by the summer, shouldn't affect our production. And it pushed me back on some of my approvals. I'm kind of the, hey, this looks good. Hey, we need to tweak this on some of that artwork, the final testing, how the layout looks in the final instructional manual. And
so you're telling us you couldn't shave your hours of sleep down to 3.5 hours from 4 hours based on new parent and dissertation? Yeah. So you're saying timely updates, being consistent, that helps with that. And I have one other side that I'm very curious about. And do you get nervous with reviews? Like, I can't imagine being a small publisher and you have to send out a review copy. And what if they say this? What if they say that? Like, what? There are just so many layers and levels. You've got the consumers, but the reviewers seem to really have an impact in the hobby. And I'm not talking about Game Schooler podcasts, so don't go ahead and I mean like the big time reviewers here. Do you get nervous with that, or what's that like?
What I learned is when I did Game Stormers, I was learning a lot. I started, working on that game in about 2020, December 2020. We, launched 2023. I had people reviewing it in kind of 2022 second half and early 2023, so we could have some previews and reviews up for the Kickstarter, and everything. And I discovered that I was kind of doing a smattering of different reviewers, from across the board. And I had that naivety thinking like, I think this game's going to land with a lot of different people. And you have to understand that your game fits a certain type of player, a certain demographic, a certain group. And so with Doomscroll, I was a little bit more intentional about really reaching out to reviewers that are more in the vein of what we're going for. I tried to be, when I put it out in the reviewer forums, the reviewer discussion areas, I tried to be really intentional saying, hey, here's our premise of our game. Here's really the people who probably will be playing this game. Is that a fit for you? And so I had people who said, hey, we do a lot of content for homeschooling crowds. We review games, but we also have a bent of like, we just attract homeschooler parents because we are. I'm like, that's a big buyer of our games. Homeschooling parents who want a fun game that also builds skills. So I targeted, that group. I went back to some reviewers that just were a really good fit. Obviously the family gamers, I have a lot of families buying the games because they want, again, games that are fun on a Saturday, but also, double as like that, hey, I'm building up storytelling, critical thinking skills, social media literacy skills too. So I was much more intentional about who I asked. I didn't just do kind of a shotgun blast of reviewers from across the industry. I was more targeted in Doomscroll. And truly that was just, first time publisher ignorance of not really diving in and doing my homework and believing that, I'll have this, this total unicorn that will appeal to every type of gamer, which is just foolish, right? In any field.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, and it kind of bridges what Michael talked about, the expectations, and what you talked about of the community of publishers. I feel like, and talking about life getting in the way, imagining that. But I think there's a general consensus that people don't realize how many small publishers there are, that this is not their main gig. And so I think people tend to get into that lump that anybody that's publishing a game is Hasbro or Asmodee or something like that, where it's like, certainly we've all had Kickstarters where you have the publisher that's like, it's constantly getting delayed and it borders on malfeasance of what, your cat got struck by lightning. And like, this is why we're delaying it this time. But I feel like there should be a little bit more grace for folks to realize that, this is not your main job. I'm sure you would love it to be your main job, but you're fitting it in when you can and still trying to do that. And I don't know if there's any way to increase that awareness outside of interviews and things like that. But I don't even know if I have a point there of just like all of those things coming together. And it's like, I wish people weren't as hard on publishers. And if you feel that, maybe in the reviewers and things like that.
I thought your point was to have grace for cat owners who are struck by lightning.
Yeah, that is unfortunate for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a real epidemic around our part of the country, with our storms. But I think one thing that I try to do is I'm very fortunate. I come from a writing background. I blog monthly about our journey, and some of them are, I know my demographic. I target a lot of families. A lot of the updates are, here's what's new with my adorable daughters, and here's what's new with Doomscroll and Game Stormers. And people, I think, see that this is a father who's, with young kiddos, who is trying to build up this game with playtesting that's on the weekends or nights, either online or going to events and things like that. It's about, somebody who is trying to cultivate this, and it's a complement to what he does during the day. And I try to be transparent about that, and I share those blogs in our Kickstarters. I share that blog in our newsletter. So I think our rabid fans really are cognizant of who is behind the curtain, where you don't always have that with the big publishers. And I think they have a little less leeway with the big publishers because they do picture the big monolithic, groups who are putting these out and should have their stuff together. Whereas with me, they say, if I had a 1-year-old pulling on my hair as I'm trying to, process that feedback data, I understand. And so I think being transparent with the story is another thing I've got going for me. And I'm lucky that a blog is not hard for me to write. I enjoy doing it, actually. It's cathartic and it's fun. And the last few have been very about our your crowd, the game schoolers who are interested in the educational aspects too. I've just been blogging the last 5 about educational overlap and teaching different topics and skills and things like that using our games and other games.
I'm sorry to talk over you there, Dr. Spike, but let's jump in there. You have a unique perspective. You're a teacher, and you've been a teacher for a while now. How do board games sharpen, teach, or hone skills?
Yeah, I mean, the research is out there and it's plentiful. We do actually on Game Storm Edu have a blog about this, and it's pretty unanimous. There is just incredible innate, storytelling, and just the creative constraint of a lot of games out there where they get you using a finite amount of prompts and ideas to then construct your own ideas, worlds, arguments, in entertaining answers. Those are some of my favorite games. Games give you that creative constraint that are really powerful. And the research out there says we can see that, students, participants in studies, whoever it might be, find that they are able to generate new ideas easier after playing some of these creative outlook games. We have studies out there that show that I am better at number sense and spatial reasoning and other key skills in life if I play games that really tap into that in ways that are engaging. So it's something that we know that via the research, that I try a game versus I try a traditional means, and I compare in that, in that standard quote unquote group, the traditional group and the gaming group, that we are going to see better outputs of the participants when we do that. So to get kind of semi research nerdy there, we know it's there. And then observationally, it's not hard to see when you're playing a game. I've talked to principals, I've talked to superintendents who say, I think in terms of going around the circular board scoring when I'm doing some of my jump to numbers, right? I think about thinking in fives because a game that I love, has that victory path, and I'm thinking about going around that victory path as I'm jumping around numbers. So the great thing for me is this isn't a hard sell to admin. It's not a hard sell to teachers. It's not a hard sell to parents and guardians because they've witnessed it typically in their just observational play. But then also the great news is the numbers back us up too. So that was the nerdiest version of that answer.
That was awesome.
Yeah, imagining parents and teachers wanting better results for their kids. What is what is your favorite part about Doomscroll?
Yeah, you know what? I talked about I enjoy blogging. I really had a lot of fun, and I didn't know if people would really love it. I wrote original, kind of in the context of a fantasy world, social media posts on every single card. Those cards are me. We had a fan submitted one too. That's kind of fun. So a fan submitted one, but it's all these, spooky creatures. It's zombies, it's robots, it's pirates, it's, insert your fantasy world, wizards, writing these social media posts about
Thanks for getting
topics.
Wizards there. Appreciate that mention.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't want the wizard crowd that follows your show.
No, they're the worst. They'll really get on you.
They will.
Yeah.
Okay.
No mention
Cat
of wizards.
owner struck by lightning, a wizard host. Back to you, John. Sorry.
Yeah. but it was very fun. I'm sitting down, I get the girls to bed, and I'm down in the basement, and I'm sure my wife could hear me giggling, thinking I was super clever, about this post that I'd written. And they're all about contemporary subjects. So we have 4 main topics that you kind of target with your users: politics, sports, entertainment, and oh my gosh, this is my own game and I'm blanking on my 4th here. What did I say? Politics, sports, entertainment, and hobbies. There we go. And so these are the things the posts are about, and we all have a spin of it's conceivably about a topic from a fantasy world. So I made up fake shows. There's a lot of that. There's an Office spoof called The Factory, about robots and things like that. I had a ton of fun writing these, and I found that in between turns, one big problem with games, as you know, is downtime. Our game has a little downtime. It's turn-based. But during the turns, if people have kind of figured out their strategy, they're looking at these posts. And so I just watched during playtests of people smirking. And I can't tell you enough, it's very rewarding to watch somebody giggling at your terrible pun or your dystopian world, joke that you made, from this character. So that was an absolute blast. And something that I just didn't even think about as being a residual, bonus of designing Doomscroll. I really enjoy the mechanics of the game, but the flavor text was an absolute blast to write.
Awesome.
I can't wait to see Doug's chuckle when he gets some of the flavor text. He'll get the double shoulder chuckle going probably right after we finish playing the first game.
That's all I want to see is the double.
Good. Well, you won't see it. You'll have to come over and play it with us.
Yeah.
I just have one more question for you. We really appreciate your time, Dr. Spike. I don't know if Doug has more, but I'm curious now. You've been in this space as a designer/publisher for about half of a decade here. So how do you see the board game space evolving for designers and for players over the next decade?
Yeah, it's funny. I mentioned, the publisher space being really interesting. This comes up once a month where people say, "Hey, where do you think this is going? What things are you noticing in the space?" One thing that people are noticing in the pitching to publishers, so where you're saying, "I have a game idea I want to design but not publish," here's what they're looking for in a pitch. They're looking for really quick to teach, something really unique mechanically, usually table presence mechanically, thinking about, I was talking in your Discord about Planet Unknown, and that Lazy Susan is just such a unique, fun mechanic that they've added, right? And so they're looking for that sort of thing, but then married to a game where it's a 5-minute teach. The challenge there is that it's a really hard thing to do, to make this unique mechanical experience, have a lot of table presence wow bits and pieces, and then also, the quick teach. That's one thing that I think is coming. I think this situation where we had kind of the tariff scare that's, still, this might be super outdated if somebody listens to this later, but, it's still kind of hovering over the industry. People are looking at, how do we consolidate but still have a rich experience? So does that mean a mixture of the digital mobile app experience overlaid on the physical? Is it people doing a little bit more with the print and play space? That's a hobby aspect of the field, but people talk about, like, is print and play going to have a renaissance as people accept that maybe their games are going to get a little bit more expensive, convoluted, challenging to roll out. So I think definitely people dip more into the digital and maybe that augmented reality space a little bit more as a result of this. And I think, people are looking for big, I see it, wow. Something that's really easy. I hate to say it, Doomscroll, right? Social media, like something that grabs your attention in a video. You see a video through your feed and the game pops because it's got something really crazy about those mechanics. They're looking for that. They don't want something that, you have to really lean in and see what the inner workings of this game is. They want something from a distance that wows. For better or for worse, right? I think you gentlemen both know, like, we ultimately worship a great game experience, and so typically, that doesn't require a big wow factor. That's more of something that appeals to the masses than some of us gamers who are looking for truly a rich experience. So those are some things I'm noticing. I definitely played a little bit with the augmented aspect. I was looking into, as a stretch goal, having our actually still image Doomscroll social media posts come to life as videos was one thing I was looking at. Just didn't get the funding to the level to justify investing in that technology, but it was something I played with, and I had a proof of concept made that's pretty cool.
Was that the $800,000 level?
Yeah, that was the John gets a yacht level.
Yeah.
Like you're funding, yes, augmented reality, but then also my yacht. Yeah, those
just bring the Game Schooler podcast to document your day on the yacht. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. You could have your own conference on the yacht. YachtCon for the Game Schooler podcast. Yeah.
All right. Well, we may not have done this in the first time you were on, but one of the things we like to ask everybody is, what's awesome about gaming?
Yeah, I think you did, and I think it threw me.
Well, it may have changed in 100 episodes.
That's true. Yeah, I will say the one thing I took away from the first Kickstarter, I had tons of our comments were actually, wait, it's 3 to 6 players. I need a 2-player, and I need a solo variant. And so I really worked to make an authentic, great experience for solo. I didn't want it to be something I
Sorry
tacked
about
on.
all those solo comments, John.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was mainly Michael.
A whole bunch of burner accounts.
He had a bunch of different Kickstarters. He backed at the $1 level and just laid into me.
Michael McCabe, Mike McCabe.
Yeah, every variation.
McMichael, they're all me.
He didn't get very creative with the burner.
No,
but,
never do.
Yeah, but yeah, that was a big piece of feedback. And so what I ended up doing is try to really make something authentic that worked really well. And so actually in our single solo variant, you're actually a moderator of the feed trying to remove vitriol from the feed. So it's actually a different play experience. But anyways, to bring it back to what's awesome, I really have fallen in love with solo and 2-player experiences of late. Yeah. I think just my daughters aren't quite at gaming age, but my wife has said, hey, if I'm going to game, I'm going to pick out a 2-player game that I like and buy it for you, or a game that has a 2-player variant that I would like. Because she's like, I know you want to get games to the table, and I'm just going to be upfront. This looks good to me. And she knows I'll play basically any game, under the sun. And so what's been awesome is the amount of great 2-player games coming out has been incredible.
There's a lot. What have you played lately that you've enjoyed, John?
So this is a throwback one, but just my wife picked it out, and it's absolutely perfectly up her alley and perfectly enough up mine. Patchwork has just been one. It's an oldie but a goodie. I got her into Seven Wonders Duel. My mistake was, and I maybe said this on the last podcast, I won the first round, and I've learned I need to lay back, play dead, let her win the first round, and she's all in on the game. But she gave that another chance. We play it now quite a bit, and so those are our two big ones. But there's tons of great ones coming out. Everybody's doing duels, either duel or duels, where you're almost partners in crime. And so I think that's been awesome. Just reconnecting over games. Usually we look at each other, we're like, we're both too exhausted from work, parenting. But sometimes we'll look at each other and say, we've got just enough brain power to bust out, a 2-player game. And that's been really awesome as an experience.
All right. Awesome. Well, before we let you go, just one more reminder of the game, where to get it, and any other things that you want to plug before we let you go.
Yeah, the game is Doomscroll. It is, again, it's launching like nowish. I know we're kind of in the vacuum of when you're listening to the podcast, but you should, upon hearing this, be able to go to GameStormEDU.com and purchase. We will be pushing it out to Amazon in a little bit. GameStormers is our first title from 2023. That's on both Amazon and GameStormEDU.com, and at some friendly local game stores. It's at Noble Knight as well, and I'll probably be in touch with them. We did a launch event of GameStormers, and I'm working out some details about doing a launch event of Doomscroll as well, kind of their launch of it, so to speak. But yeah, that's the main things to plug. And then our website, GameStormEDU.com, has lesson plans that go along with all of our games, and just lesson plans about game design. And I blog about, counted games for learning. So the game stores, awesome. Folks who listen to this is, feel free to use. If you use it in your school, your organization, homeschooling, whatever it might be, they are free to use.
Are you a mini lesson guy, John? Do you keep the mini lesson mini, or do you, are you coming out there with like 47 objectives and they got to read a script? Tell us about your lesson design, man. I can't wait to hear about that.
They're 1-pagers, basically.
Yeah.
So the very mini lesson of like, here's the 3 objectives we hit, in the standards. Here's
Game Schooler approved.
Yep. Keep it quick, and then you have room in there for riffing on it. But we try to keep it simple, and then there's usually a video from me that goes along with it. Either I prime, your learners, or I kind of talk through what it would look like, or I teach you kind of a good version of the game to work into the lesson. So there's usually me coming along with the lesson, for better or for worse. You have to listen.
Thanks for stopping by the show, John. Just want to let our listeners know John's a real deal teacher. He taught in the classroom at the secondary level, and now he's a college professor, and so he's been doing this work, and he won't say that, but I know he's an outstanding educator. So thank you for your work in the classroom and now with training future teachers at the university level. We really, really do appreciate it, John.
Yeah, and make sure to check out GameStormEDU.com. A lot of great resources there, and feel free to reach out and join the Discord. John is there and active, so if you have questions for him, there is a great place to reach out.
And scheduled to join us in episode 306 in 2027 as well. So we'll see you then.
With his
next release.
Oh, geez.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, John. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Every week, Michael and I highlight a list of games we want to play, enjoy, or spread the word about. Plus, everybody loves lists, and this week we're going to be talking about our favorite games starting with the letter B. And Michael and I were talking about this off air, but gosh, these lists are hard to put together. Hard to narrow down to 5, that's for sure.
Yeah, I brought 14 into my top 5, Doug. Number 5 for me, I'm going to jump right in. 1984, Balderdash.
No special criteria.
Laura Robinson, Paul Toyne. I guess what's real? What's a bluff? This is a mass market game that's a ton of fun to play. 2 to 6 players is what Board Game Geek lists it as. And if you want to have a good time, check out the latest edition that was published. It's really a nice little game that I kind of like. Doug, why are we gonna play Balderdash? And then when we played it, I was like, man, good game. Glad we played Balderdash, Doug. And one that I think we'll have in a spotlight segment coming up and talk more about later. At least I threw it in the queue, so eventually we'll get to it. That's my number 5, Balderdash.
Yeah, and don't let that 6-player maximum on the box of Board Game Geek. I mean, you could go up to 20 with that as long as you have sheets of paper. You're fine.
That's all you need. Yep.
So
good.
Great choice there. Wow. So many good ones.
So many.
My number 5, we talked about way back in episode 18, and that is Bunny Kingdom, which is a drafting area control game from Yellow and designer Sir Richard Garfield from 2017. What I like about this one is not only is it just a basic drafting game, and I'm normally not a fan of area control, but this one works because there's a level of risk in this one where you can take a card and you can claim areas before you actually have that card. And it can work out fine, but then maybe later somebody's like, actually, I have that card, and I will be taking that space back, and kind of trying to tread lightly, but still expand and get your kingdoms out how you would like them to. Is a really great combination of mechanisms that works really well, and I really enjoy it. That's Bunny Kingdom, my number 5.
Yeah, awesome game. Boy, you're right. It is tough to cut it down to just 5, isn't it? Number 4 for me is Biblios. 2007 was released by Dr. Steve Finn and published by Yellow. Episode 92, it was our game of the week, so you can go back and give that a listen. I just want to read a little bit of the flavor text from Board Game Geek, because I think this does, the way that it's written on Board Game Geek, the entry, it's like, Steve Finn might have written this himself. I mean, it's outlined very logically, but game characteristics, it says, the game involves a good deal of strategic planning, some bluffing, and a little bit of luck. The rules are easy to understand, but you have to play it a few times to develop a playing strategy. It plays differently from 2 to 4 players, but each game is equally fun and challenging. And it's like, yeah, it is. In a half-hour game of Biblios, you're going to have, there's 2 phases to the game. Kind of a collection phase where you're trying to get stuff, and then a phase where you're trying to manipulate and score points. And just a fantastic game, one that I haven't played in a while, Doug. I was able to track down a copy, but I haven't gotten it back to the table, and I know we have a couple different game days coming up, so I might throw that in a bag and see if we can get that played again. Number 4 for me, Biblios.
Yeah, that was on my short list, one that just missed the cut for me. My number 4 is, I'm going to talk about how I don't like area control, but then talk about another game that has that in there that I do enjoy, and that is Belfort. This game came out in 2011. But it combines worker placement with area control. So you're putting out gnomes and Vikings, or not gnomes, elves and gnomes, I believe, and putting them out and collecting resources. You're then using those resources to buy buildings and buy into guilds, which then are on these little wedge-shaped pieces that you add buildings to. And then when it's time to score, I think the game scores 2 or 3 times throughout the game, you just kind of pull all those wedge pieces apart, and it's really easy to see who's controlling in that region, as opposed to having one board, which is a really slick way to handle that. But it was published by Tasty Minstrel Games in 2011. The designer is Jay Cormier, Sen-Fung Lim, but the art is by Josh Capel, or Capel.
That's a great team right
Capel. There. And so I have no idea on the availability, if you can even find this anymore, but it is such a unique little thing of having that worker placement, but then wrapping it around into an area control. So that's my number 4, Belfort.
Cool. Yeah, one I haven't played yet. All the way up to number 3, correct?
Yes.
All right. My 3, this one's going to be a little bit of a stretch for our audience, so it won't likely ever be a game of the week or a spotlight because some of the content. It is currently the number 1 party game of all time on Board Game Geek, and that is Blood on the Clock Tower. And I've gotten 4 plays of this game in over the last month and a half or so. It's basically a deduction game like Mafia or Werewolf to the next level, where you are trying to use logic and bluff to find out who's committing the crime. I'm going to say that in as PG way as I can, but this has been a part of my deduction kick that I've been on lately. Our game of the week this week is Kronologic, but Blood on the Clock Tower is one that I waited a long time because of the theme. I thought it was a little dark, but then when I heard a few other shows review it and dug into it more, I was like, oh no, this is really going to work for my oldest kiddo who's in high school and doing a lot of drama and theater and things like that. Because, Doug, I saw 20 people play this at a convention, and I was like, they're having some fun. I want to have fun like that. And I've been really fortunate to play at our local game store's Noble Night on Tuesday nights. You know, people play, and I've just been playing the introductory game, but having a ton of fun with that game. That's my number 3 is Blood on the Clock Tower.
Awesome. Interesting. All right. My number 3 is from episode 112, and that is Bad Company. Came out originally in 2021. The North American release was last year, I believe, from a Porta Games, Kenneth Minde, Christian
Awesome design team.
Amundsen Ustby, and Eilif Svensson.
Yeah.
Bad Company is the game that I expected.
Tell it how it is. It's your list, Doug.
It replaced a space base for me. It did all of the things that I wanted space base to do, but in a cleaner, less confusing way. I love that idea of it's kind of replaced space base and maybe a little bit of a Machi Koro of rolling dice and activating the buildings, or in this case, your posse and your crew that's in front of you, and as you add more characteristics and they get a little bit taller and they become more powerful, and you have a choice to make on whether you want to add a lot of upgrades to one person or spread them out, and are you putting them in the middle numbers as you roll 2 dice, knowing that the 7s, 6s, 7s, and 8s are going to come up more frequently, but so just a fun game. Go back to episode 112 if you want to hear more about it, but that's my number 3, Bad Company.
Awesome. Great game. Phenomenal game. Love it. Love everything you said about it. My number 2 is Bruges, Doug.
Mine too.
Okay, well, let's talk about Bruges. You have a lot more plays than I do. I was first introduced to Bruges on March 20th, 2024 at Doug's house. And this game from 2013, designed by Stefan Feld, was one that stayed with me for about 2 to 3 months, where I'm like, I love that game. And funny story, I actually owned Hamburg, which was re-implemented by Bruges when I played Bruges. And I traded Hamburg to get Bruges because there was just something about that beige 2013 copy that I love. And the mechanics of it, it's just a very clean game. Yeah, I can't really tell the brown from the red, but you know what? I can use other context clues and figure it out with my color blindness. There's just something so enjoyable about the dice placement and the decision space and what you do. And it plays in about an hour and a half. It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, a great game with multi-use cards. And it's just, if you love that puzzle of having a hand of 5 cards and looking at each one of them saying, it's like, well, I'd like to use this for that, but then you say, oh, but then I won't be able to use it for this. And to do that with 5 cards and figuring out, okay, I'm going to have to use this one to pay for this other one, and then I'll put that out. And just kind of that cascading ability and workflow of how you have to go through it in order to maximize it efficiently. There's a bunch of different avenues you can go down to score points.
Yep.
So I think that's one of the things that makes it work well with a bunch of different players, because there are different strategies in this that you can kind of choose how you like to play games. If you want to be a race player, you can do that. If you want to be build an engine and get that going, you can do that. If you want to do set collection, you can score points. So the fact that there's a lot of different strategies to try, and that I've never found one to be more powerful than the next, I think allows people to settle into the way that they want to play while they're playing it.
And it's tough to find. Like I said,
Yeah.
that was published in 2013 by Z-Man, so just be aware of it. Be persistent in your chase, and you will find it. I was probably I don't know, 0 for 25 on my trade request. And then all of a sudden one day on Board Game Geek, somebody offered it. I was like, yes. So,
well, and if you haven't played Bruges originally, you might be completely fine with Hamburg. As a gameplay. So it's like there's not a ton of difference gameplay wise between the two of them. There is in some cases more of just a charm, and to what you said is like there was a charm of it that made you want the original one after having played the original one. If neither of us had ever played the original one, I don't know that we would know that we were missing that. So don't be afraid to try out Hamburg if you get a chance. So
good call.
All right, what's your number one, Michael?
Number one was a game of the week in episode 211, kind of, and that's Bonanza, Uwe Rosenberg's game from 1997, all about farming beans. You could make trades, or you could just play your own game. But then eventually you're going to need to make trades, because when you're planting beans in Bonanza, you have to play the cards in order. And you know what? I might really need to get to that coffee bean that's buried third in my hand to maximize those points, because I have coffee coming up. Well, what am I going to do about the wax beans? But can I really afford to make that trade? So I love the negotiating, the trading. I've talked about Bonanza a lot on this show over the years. And even though time continues to go by, we still have our copy and still absolutely love it. I have Bonanza and Bonanza Dahlia. I think if I'm introducing the game to anybody, I will go right to Bonanza Dahlia, simply because it's slightly more approachable. And the art is gorgeous. I mean, Beth Sobel art's amazing. But the 1997 version of Bonanza, I don't think I'll ever be able to part with, because of the sentimentality at this point and just the delightfulness of those beans.
Yeah. No, great choice there. That was one that stood out, and I have the Dahlia's version. I got rid of my original one just because of the being able to get it to the table faster, but that's just a great choice. My number one is one that I feel like I'm the only champion of, and I don't care. It's one, when you were talking about the lists of, which ones would I play right now? Which ones could I get to the table as being kind of a qualifier? This is one for me that is like, I'll play this anytime, and I just love the puzzle for whatever reason. And that's Birds of a Feather. The one that's available now is the Western North America one, but I fell in love with the original. The one that's out now came out in 2022 by Snowbright Studios, designer Teal Fristo, and it combines the elements of a trick-taking game with hidden information, and the idea of how can I maximize the stuff that's, when we talk about Kronologic and that private information and public information, and it's okay, these are the birds that I can see. How do I make sure I'm the only one that sees them? And can I play a way that allows me to see other people's great birds while keeping mine to myself? And that puzzle is always fascinating to me, and I don't play it as much as I should, but every time I see it, I'm like, ooh, there's just something I like about that game. So that's my number one. We talked about it in episode 114, Birds of a Feather.
So approachable too. I mean, you can play it with your family, play it with a spouse. You can play it with people who don't play a ton of games. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you mentioned Biblios, but like Back to the Future, Back in Time, we talked about in episode 46. Great game. Blood Rage. Bunch of Fun Guys is another good one.
That's a good one.
And Burgle Brothers.
How about Beastie Bar? That's a favorite of both of ours.
Yeah.
Belrati continues to get play in my house. It was
hard.
Featured in Spotlight. Boop is one that should be on my list. I just haven't played it enough, And Blueprints was a game of the week. Blue Lagoon was a game of the week.
Yeah.
Blank Slate's another really good party game.
All right. Well, subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on X at GameSchoolerU. Again, subscribe and like our videos on YouTube. We really appreciate that. Join our Discord, gameschooler.com/Discord. And keeping with the theme of bees, next week we're going on to the C's. We're going to be talking about Critter Kitchen. We're going to be talking about asymmetry in games and our favorite app-assisted games. So thank you for spending the last hour or so with us. We truly appreciate it.
And a big thank you to Dr. Jon Spike for joining the Game Schooler podcast today in the School of Gaming. Doomscroll is his game, Doomscroll, that is available now.